I'll use Mom's room, Emily said with a laugh. So, what am I supposed to do? You can sleep in the car, Kevin, my husband, said, making a shooing gesture at me. Got it. I said that and turned my back on the two of them. Basically, they don't need me. If that's the case, I've got my own plan. I bit my lip. Looking back, I've always been taken advantage of. I could endure it because I thought we were family. But to them, I was just a roommate. They don't care if I'm not around. Well, I don't need to endure it anymore. I will do what I want. They better brace up. Even if they regret it after losing everything, I will never forgive them. I'll make them feel the humiliation I've endured. My name is Sarah. At 47, I work for a travel magazine's editorial department. However, I only go to the office about once a week. Most of the time, I'm at home staring at my computer screen. Simply put, I'm a remote worker. There's a reason for this. When I married Kevin at 24, he said this before we got married. I'm in sales and don't have time for housework, so I want you to be a full-time homemaker. But I didn't want to quit the job I loved. So, I switched to working from home. I started working from home while doing housework. Then our daughter Emily was born. Since then, it has been a whirlwind of childcare, housework, and work. But Kevin and Emily could not understand. You have it easy, don't you? Doing whatever you want at home. Isn't working from home just for pocket money? This is how Kevin and Emily put me down. Why don't I choose to divorce him? I've thought about it a lot since Emily moved out. But when we first got married, Kevin used to be considerate of me. That's what attracted me to him and made me decide to marry him. But it didn't last long. Within 6 months of our marriage, Kevin became obsessed with his hobbies. What are you doing? Working on my motorcycle. Kevin looked up, covered in oil. His clothes were filthy, and he seemed genuinely focused. Motorcycles are fine, but help out with the housework too. I know, Kevin said with a laugh and resumed working on his motorcycle. Our new home after marriage was a house in the suburbs. The house was old, but it had a garage where Kevin could store his motorcycle. That's why Kevin decided on this house right away. Of course, the low rent was also a plus, so I was glad we could live here. But it doesn't mean I have no regrets. Because of that garage, Kevin started buying motorcycle parts like crazy. I can store them in the garage, so it's fine to buy them, right? With that, Kevin bought parts one after another. Gradually, the parts became more expensive. Eventually, the spending began to strain our household finances. Could you cut back a little? It's affecting our family budget. Huh? I earned this money, didn't I? I can spend it however I want. I just wanted him to save a little. But Kevin didn't understand that. Every time I said something, Kevin would push back. This repeated until our relationship became increasingly strained. One day, I suddenly felt a change in my body. Do I have a fever? It wasn't serious, but I couldn't ignore it. So I went to see a doctor. The doctor's diagnosis was pregnancy. Joy and anxiety hit me at the same time. Now that we are on bad terms, will I be able to have a child in peace? What if we get divorced? What should I do? With these worries, I told Kevin about the pregnancy. Kevin was overjoyed. From that day, Kevin became like a different person. I'll do the shopping after work. I'll handle the cleaning and laundry on my days off, he said. Kevin started doing everything for home. He had never helped before, and he had changed so much. All my worries vanished like a lie. I regained a happy life. Eventually, Emily was born. As soon as she was born, Kevin started doting on her, ignoring me. But maybe his affection went too far. Emily, spoiled by Kevin, grew up very demanding. She wouldn't listen to me and would throw tantrums even if I scolded her a little. By the time she was in middle school, she stopped listening to me altogether. Naturally, I complained to Kevin. Stop spoiling Emily. Her behavior is getting out of hand. Really? A kid's whims are kind of cute, aren't they? Kevin's words annoyed me. At that moment, Emily walked into the room. Are you jealous because you're not getting attention? Emily laughed out loud. Kevin joined in the laughter. I got up and left the room as if fleeing. I have work to do. As I said that, Emily smirked. Your little work-from-home job, right? Good luck earning some pocket money. It was ridiculous to even respond. I ignored Emily and left the room. Right after, I could hear Emily and Kevin talking from inside the room. Hey, there's this dress I want. All right. I will buy it for you. Yay. It's nice having a dad who actually works. I pretended not to hear. From then on, Kevin had no reservations. He bought Emily whatever she wanted. He even seemed to give her pocket money secretly. I'll endure it until Emily becomes independent. Then I'll divorce Kevin. That's what I had been thinking. Eventually, Emily graduated from high school and said she wanted to become a hairdresser, moving out of the house. Now I can be free. I started preparing for the divorce. Meanwhile, Kevin's motorcycle hobby resurged, and he even went on tours occasionally. Maybe he's trying to fill the void left by Emily's absence. Well, the money he used to spend on Emily is now going to his motorcycle. I plan to divorce him eventually. I thought I could let him have some freedom. So, I avoided interfering. One holiday. Kevin came to borrow my car. What is it for? I'm going to play golf with my colleagues. Kevin usually commuted by train. Moreover, his hobby was motorcycles, and he hardly ever drove the car. So, I bought the car and was the one who mostly used it. Yet today, he wanted to drive the car. Could it be a ride with a mistress? A suspicion crossed my mind, and after lending Kevin the car, I ordered something online. A few days later, the order arrived. I hurriedly installed it in the car. After that, Kevin started using the car frequently. And he always seemed eager to go out. Each time, I suspected infidelity. I decided to confront him only after gathering evidence. I kept reminding myself to be patient. A month or so passed like this. The prospect of divorce became more tangible. I continued my remote work, so I wasn't worried about money even after the divorce. But, I was over 40. It wouldn't be surprising if I couldn't work anymore at any moment. Thinking that, I remembered my parents' house. My mother passed away a few years ago, and now it's practically empty. The house itself is old, but it still belongs to me. If I renovate that house, I might not have to worry about money. Having a house means I'll manage somehow. That's what my late mother used to tell me. I remembered my mother's words and immediately consulted Kevin. I want to tear down my parents' house and build a new one there. If you're paying for it, do whatever you want. Kevin replied indifferently. Still, I got his approval. I took action right away. I found a contractor and asked them to build the house. My life suddenly became very busy. Just as the house was about to be completed, Emily contacted us after a long time. Actually, I'm pregnant. Pregnant. Who's the father? His name is Michael. We've filed the marriage papers, but he's been busy with work. According to Emily, her husband Michael was currently in a busy period at work. So, he couldn't come to meet us. Moreover, Emily was already pregnant. She was anxious about being alone and wanted to return home for the birth. No matter how spoiled she is, Emily is my beloved daughter. I couldn't tell her not to come back. Reluctantly, I agreed to let her come home for the birth. Eventually, my new house was completed. We moved in, and Emily returned home. After looking around the house, Emily asked me. There aren't many rooms. Where should I stay? Use the guest room. It's not very big, but it's fine for sleeping. I don't have my own room? Even though it's a new house. Emily pouted. Just as I was getting exasperated, Emily laughed and said. Then, let's do this. I'll use Mom's room. So, where am I supposed to stay? Before I could respond, Kevin interrupted. You can sleep in the car. Kevin made a shooing gesture at me. Got it. I said that and turned my back on them. Basically, they don't need me. If that's the case, I've got my own plan. I bit my lip. Looking back, I've always been taken advantage of. I could endure it because I thought we were family. But to them, I was just a roommate. They don't care if I'm not around. Well, I don't need to endure it anymore. I will do what I want. They better brace up. Even if they regret it after losing everything, I will never forgive them. I'll make them feel the humiliation I've endured. And I've already prepared for the divorce. This is the perfect time to leave. At this moment, I resolved to get divorced. I went back to my room and started packing my clothes into a bag. I grabbed my bag and returned to Kevin and Emily. "You don't need luggage just to sleep in the car," Kevin said. "I need it because I'm leaving," I replied. "Leaving?" Kevin's eyes widened in shock. I handed him the divorce papers I had prepared. "Sign this." Divorce papers. Are you serious about getting a divorce? It's a lot better than sleeping in the car. I yelled at Kevin. Kevin flinched for a moment. Then, he smirked. "Fine, you are just bluffing, right? I'll sign it." Kevin grabbed the divorce papers from me. He signed them on the spot. "Oh, finally getting a divorce, huh? Well, I don't need a nagging mom anyway." Emily sneered. It seemed both Kevin or Emily could not understand the situation they were in. I smiled. "Emily, once we're divorced, you won't be able to live like you have been." "Huh? Dad's the one supporting the household." "What are you talking about? Are you really that clueless?" I showed Emily my phone, still smiling. "Look closely. Do you know what this is?" "What? What's this?" "Our household budget. See here? This says loan repayment." I tapped on the screen. Emily leaned in to look. "All of this debt is because of you." "Huh? I didn't borrow anything." Emily protested. "True, you didn't borrow it. Your dad borrowed it for you." "What? Dad?" Emily's eyes widened as she turned to Kevin. Kevin looked away. "You were spoiled by Dad, weren't you? All the money you spent, it was all borrowed." "No. That can't be true, Dad." Emily confronted Kevin. But Kevin just avoided her gaze. Realizing his silent affirmation, Emily was stunned. I poured salt on her wound. "That's why most of Dad's salary goes to pay off these debts." "Then what about living expenses?" "From my salary you mocked. Now, enjoy living with your debt-ridden father." Emily turned pale at my words. She clung to me desperately. "Wait, Mom. What about my living expenses here?" "Well, ask your father for it." "Without money? That's impossible." If she stayed at home, she could live a luxurious life. Emily must have thought so. But in reality, she would be living with her debt-ridden father. She must be feeling utterly hopeless. "Well, you two have fun together," I said, leaving the house. I went to an internet cafe and decided to stay there for the time being. I got the divorce papers. Now I just needed someone to negotiate the terms of the divorce. Using the internet, I searched for a lawyer. I also rented a weekly apartment for temporary housing. Once I caught my breath, I started thinking about the future. Kevin and Emily were probably arguing about the debt. But that wasn't enough to satisfy me. Is there a better way? While browsing the internet, an ad caught my eye. At that moment, I muttered, "Sell the house, that's it." I immediately contacted the real estate agent from the ad. A few days later, on a weekend, I returned home with the real estate agent. I rang the doorbell and Emily answered. "What are you doing here? You don't talk to your mother like that, do you?" "Mother? You're not my mother after the divorce," Emily yelled. She was clearly angry about the living expenses situation and blamed me. Ignoring her, I entered the house. Then Emily noticed the real estate agent behind me. "Who are those people?" "They're real estate agents." "Real estate agents?" Emily looked suspicious. I smiled and announced, "I'm selling the house. They're here for the valuation." "What? Selling the house?" Emily shouted. Finally, Kevin rushed out. What's going on, Emily? Why are you shouting? This person is saying she's going to sell the house. This person. I see. I felt a surge of anger but bit my lip to keep calm. Kevin looked at me and then noticed the real estate agent behind me. He started to get angry. What do you think you're doing? You can't just do whatever you want. Kevin pointed his finger at my face and yelled. I pushed his finger away and calmly replied. I'm the one who decided to sell the house. You have no right to interfere. Don't be ridiculous. If you try to do this, I'll sue you. Go ahead and try. You can't win. The house is in my name. When I said that, Kevin was at a loss for words. Emily, with trembling lips, asked Kevin. The house is in her name. Not yours? Well. What is this? You never told me. Kevin and Emily started arguing. Ignoring them, I led the real estate agent further inside. Please go ahead with the valuation, I said to the agent, and then returned to Kevin and Emily. They were still arguing. You're getting a divorce, right? Just give me the house as alimony. That's not possible. Why not? As Emily screamed, I intervened. That's not happening. I have no fault in this. Shut up. Emily pushed me aside. Furious, I shouted at her. Enough. Your father is the one who should be paying alimony. Huh? It's just a fight leading to a divorce, right? It's not about who's at fault. The divorce is because of your father's affair. Our recent fight was just the trigger. Isn't that right? Kevin looked down as I glared at him. Emily stood there, stunned. The truth is, he's been having an affair for a long time. I've been planning to divorce him for that. An affair? Isn't that just your imagination? Emily sneered. Kevin, on the other hand, was sweating profusely. Well, it's almost like he's admitting it. But I might as well show the evidence. I placed an envelope I had brought on the table. I prepared all the necessary documents for the divorce discussion. I took out the photos from the envelope. They showed Kevin talking with an unfamiliar woman in my car. Having an affair in my car, how careless. That's why you left evidence. What, how did you? Kevin was shocked. It wasn't hard. The dashcam recorded it. The dashcam? Kevin's eyes widened. Oh, didn't you know? Dashcams can also record the inside of the car. I know that, but dashcams are now common knowledge. They can capture not only the front and rear views but also the interior. So, I used that to my advantage. The first time Kevin borrowed my car, I suspected his affair. So, I bought the latest dashcam online and installed it in the car. As a result, I was able to capture Kevin's affair on camera. And I printed it out. By the way, do you have any excuses? Well, Kevin mumbled, unable to form coherent words. I felt triumphant and asked Kevin. For alimony, considering the affair, $30,000. Does that work for you? I can't pay that much. Sell your motorcycle. If you refuse, it'll go to divorce mediation and court. Kevin slumped his shoulders in defeat. Then he muttered, fine. While we were talking, the appraisal of the house was completed, and the real estate agent left. All right, I'm leaving too. I stood up quietly. At that moment, Emily, who had been silent, spoke up. Wait. I'm not agreeing to sell the house. Whether you agree or not, the sale is decided. Shut up, shut up. I'm not leaving. Emily, throwing a tantrum like a child, stormed off to her room. I sighed, exasperated. I then told the dejected Kevin. Anyway, I've informed you about the house sale. You have until next Saturday to move out. Wait. Please reconsider. Kevin suddenly got down on his knees. No way. I'm not changing my mind about the divorce or the sale. Think it over. We won't be able to live like this. That's not my problem. Do whatever you want. I turned my back on Kevin. I headed quickly to the front door. Kevin chased after me, shouting, "What pleasure do you get from doing this? It's not about pleasure. It's about getting back at you for your affair." I smiled slyly. Kevin fell silent. I reiterated to him, "Don't forget, the moving deadline is Saturday." Kevin nodded quietly. The next day, I started moving out the remaining items from the house. Emily still looked dissatisfied. Before leaving, I reminded her of the move-out deadline one last time. Emily turned her face away. Now, what other revenge should I plan? As I pondered this, Saturday came. Then, early Sunday morning, my phone suddenly rang while I was sleeping. "Hello?" I answered groggily. Suddenly, Emily's loud voice echoed. "You? What did you do?" "Emily?" I sat up in bed, startled. Emily kept shouting. The whole house suddenly went dark. "It's obviously your doing." After thinking for a moment, I asked Emily, "You haven't moved out, have you?" "Of course not. I haven't agreed to sell the house." Emily shouted. "Oh, I see." At that moment, I realized why Emily was so angry. After deciding to sell the house, I naturally canceled the water and electricity contracts as well. Of course, there needed to be some notice. So, the contracts were set to end on Saturday. Even though the contracts were cancelled, it didn't mean that the utilities would be cut off immediately. Usually, a technician comes to the house during the day after the cancellation to turn off the water and electricity. But my house had a smart meter for electricity. This can be remotely controlled, so the electricity was cut off as soon as the date changed. In other words, since the electricity contract was cancelled, you can't use electricity anymore. "What? You've got to be kidding." Emily began to shout again. I held my phone away from my ear. After a while, when Emily calmed down, I spoke to her again. "It can't be helped. The house has been sold. What are we supposed to do? We can't live without electricity." Emily threw another tantrum. I spoke to her as if calming a child. "You should have listened. Besides, if you keep making noise, the neighbors will call the police." "The police?" Emily tilted her head. "When I moved out, I informed the neighbors that I had sold the house. To them, my house was already considered empty. If someone made a lot of noise there, it would be natural for them to think a burglar had broken in. And Emily probably only had the light from her phone. It looked incredibly suspicious. So, you'd better get out quickly." Just as I was saying that, I heard Emily scream. I also heard Kevin shouting. "Looks like they might have been reported to the police." I hung up the phone, thinking that. I quickly got dressed and rushed to the house, and as I expected, Emily and Kevin were being detained by the police. "I'm sorry for the trouble. They're family, but we're getting divorced." I bowed to the police officer. I also apologized to the neighbors who had come out because of the commotion. As I turned around, I saw Emily and Kevin starting to argue again. "It's because you cheated, Dad. You were thrown out for cheating too." It seemed like they were two peas in a pod. Without any shame, their argument continued. "I'm not caught yet. I'm just being suspected." At that moment, a man interrupted. "Emily, so you have been cheating." It was Michael, Emily's husband, who had come to pick her up by night bus. "Michael?" "No, this is..." Emily began to make excuses, but it was too late. In the end, the commotion ended with the spectacular public reveal of their infidelities. After that, Kevin and I got divorced, and so did Emily and Michael. Emily ended up paying alimony to Michael. However, Emily had no money and was pregnant. Kevin, whom she relied on, was also drowning in debt. In the end, Kevin sold his motorcycle to pay the alimony to Michael and me. Additionally, it seems that Kevin mistakenly told his company that the police incident was due to a dispute with his mistress. Although he denied it later, the rumor spread, and he ended up quitting his job. After that, Kevin and Emily moved into a small apartment to save money. I've heard that Kevin is now working part-time to make ends meet. As for me, I canceled the house sale. Of course, there were cancellation fees. But I decided to cover them with the alimony I received from Kevin. Since I went through the trouble of building it, it would be a waste not to live in it. So now, I'm enjoying living alone in my new house. For a while, I think I'll be fine on my own. With these thoughts, I'm now working comfortably in my new home.